Hello. Today I'd like to talk about getting started with development for Synesthesia.live. For this video, we're going to assume that you have downloaded VS Code from the link provided in the description of this video, and that you have downloaded Synesthesia.live to your computer and have purchased a standard license which will allow you to edit and create custom scenes in Synesthesia. When you first open Synesthesia, you should be greeted with the welcome scene unless you have changed that setting in your settings menu. From here, we'd like to go to settings on the left pane here, and we're going to want to scroll to the bottom to this scene folders section, and we're going to want to add a folder. I personally like to keep all of my development work underneath a directory called dev under my C directory. From here, I'm going to create a new folder called Synesthesia. We want to note that Synesthesia is selected here in the folder section and click select folder. Finally, we want to click this primary button here. Next, we'll want to download the getting started.synesthesia zip file from the description of this video. For me, it downloaded to my downloads directory. We're going to copy this scene and go to our newly created Synesthesia directory, and we're going to paste the zip file here. Now we'll want to extract this file or this folder to this location, and you can confirm that you've extracted this folder successfully because you will see a getting started.synesthesia folder at the dev Synesthesia location or wherever you set up your custom scene folder location to be. It's important to note here that every Synesthesia.live scene is packaged underneath a folder that ends in the .synesthesia suffix as seen here. Now that this has been added here, we can come back to Synesthesia and click the library button on the left hand side. We're going to want to click refresh library to repopulate the library with any scenes that have since been added to our custom scene folder since opening the program. Once you've refreshed, you'll come to the search bar and type getting started, and we'll see our scene here. We'll want to select the scene, and once it's selected, you'll see that it's loaded. And since we're going to want to be editing this scene, we'll want to come over here to the right panel and select this pencil icon to open the editing menu, and then we'll click edit current scene. We can confirm that our scene has loaded successfully for editing by looking at the console output section here and seeing that there is a green text line here indicating successful load of the scene. If we click this button on the left hand side, it'll open the control panel for the scene, and we can see that we have one control defined, and that control is called color shift. Moving it up, we can see that the color is shifted or rotated for our output. So how do we actually look at the code? For this step, we're going to want to open VS Code. And if you haven't opened VS Code before, your welcome screen will likely look similar to as mine does here. And from here, we'll want to click File and then Open Folder. And now we're going to want to select our custom folder that we created earlier for our syn scenes. So for me, that is C dev syn scenes. Once again, we're just confirming that we have this syn scenes in the folder section here and clicking select folder. You should now see, I'm going to close this welcome screen. You should now see that the Synesthesia directory has been loaded in the left-hand File Explorer side here, and that we can see our getting started.synesthesia here. as one final step, we're going to want to actually come over to the extensions pane, and you're going to want to install this shader languages support for VS Code extension. I've included a link to this extension specifically in the description of this video, though you should be able to search for it within VS Code and find it as well. You'll need to install this extension and enable it. Since I've already done this for my own environment, I'm not going to do it again for this video, but please feel free to reach out if you get stuck. Coming back to the File Explorer, we're going to expand our getting started.syn scene, and we can see here that there are 4 primary components for a Synesthesia.live scene. There are 3 text files, and they are the Main.glsl. This is where your shader code will live. There is a scene.json file, which is important for defining metadata for your scene, as well as the controls and defining passes if you were to be creating a multi-pass shader effect, but that is a topic we will discuss at a later date. And finally, there's a script.js, and this is a JavaScript file that you can leverage for overriding the built-in audio variables that come with Synesthesia, as well as defining your own shader uniforms to be used in your shader code. Also, you'll notice this getting started sc.png. This picture serves as our thumbnail for our scene. Let's go back to the scene.json file and look at some important sections, namely the title. This is going to be the title of your scene. For us, it is getting started template. This image path, you can see here, references the getting started sc.png, and this defines the name of the image file to be used for your thumbnail in the Synesthesia library. This width determines the resolution, the width resolution for your shader, and the height is the resolution, the height resolution. So we have a 1920 by 1080 shader or Synesthesia scene. There's also a description section, and this is used for just providing a description about what the Synesthesia scene is or what it does. There's also a credits section, which is where you'll find the author for the scene. You could replace this with your name if this was a scene you were making or editing. And lastly, there is this controls section, and this is where we will define all of our controls for the Synesthesia.live scene. Right now, we only have the one color shift control, as we saw earlier. So let's go over to the main.glsl file. Here we have a very simple shader. We are defining the UV coordinate as a new variable called UV. This underscore UV, it comes pre-packaged with Synesthesia. If you check out the documentation that is linked in the description of this video, you can find an extraordinarily in-depth information about all of the things that are included in Synesthesia, and we will also be going over those in future videos. At line 14, we are defining a vector4 variable called color, and this just contains a map of the UV coordinates as well as our color shift, which is in our B. So a vec4 is a RGBA value. For our R, we are setting it to the horizontal coordinates of our UV coordinate for the screen. Our green channel is being set to the value for the vertical coordinates for our UV screen coordinates. The B channel is set to our color shift, which is a slider controlled value ranging from 0 to 1. And our alpha is set to a 1 because we want it to appear fully. Let's look at some options for defining another control. Let's say we'll want to define one that fades to black for us smoothly. So we'll come over to the scene.json file, and we're going to go ahead and copy this control for the color shift slider, put a comma, and then paste the block. So here's a good opportunity to look at the different sections that make up a control by default. So the most important is the name here. We're going to name this fade to black. It's important to note here that you'll want to replace your spaces with underscores so that the value can be interpreted correctly in your GLSL file. Next, we have a type. There's a multitude of types defined in Synesthesia. For this example, we'll make it a toggle. There's a UI group section. This is for grouping the controls on the actual control panel. So to show an example of this, we'll change the UI group name to fade. Next, there is a minimum value and a maximum value. This is defining the range for our slider or our toggle or our control in general. So in this case, it is a toggle, and for a toggle, we say that the minimum value is equal to the off value for the toggle, whereas the maximum value is equal to the on value for the toggle. And another one to note is this default. The default value is the value that the control will be defaulted to when the scene is loaded or when the default button is pressed in the control panel. Additionally, there is a description section, and this is where you can provide a useful description for your control. So for this one, we'll say this toggle fades the scene to black. So one thing to note here is that with the name fade to black, we would assume that our on value wants to fade the scene to black versus our off value fading the scene to black. So for this, I'm going to switch these values to 1.0 for the minimum and 0.0 for the maximum. What that's going to do here is we're going to come down, make a new line, and say color is equal to itself times fade to black. Here we are referencing our toggle that we defined in the scene.json file, and what that's going to do is when we toggle it on, it's going to set fade to black to a value of 0, as we can see by our max value here. And when it's toggled off, fade to black will be set to a value of 1, and we know that anything multiplied by 1 is equal to itself, so color times 1 is going to be equal to color, and anything times 0 is equal to 0, and 0 is interpreted as black in shaders. So if we were to say color times 0 is equal to color, then color would be equal to 0, or black. So let's see this in action. We'll come over to Synesthesia, and now we'll want to click either the reload scene icon here on the right, or my preference, which is just pressing Control R on your keyboard. We can see that the toggle has loaded successfully, and it is loaded to be on, so our output is black. If we turn the toggle off, it is our original color output. You can also see here that fade has been created as a new UI group, and this will keep these controls separate from each other. I hope you found this video useful, and I look forward to talking on the topic of shaders and Synesthesia Live scenes much more in depth in future videos. Thank you.